Where there is no human connection, there is no compassion. Without compassion, then community, commitment, loving kindness, human understanding, and peace all shrivel. Individuals become isolated.
Hey, Daddy!
The isolated turn cruel. And the tragic hovers in the forms of domestic and civil violence. Art and literature are antidotes to that. Susan Vreeland. When doing pet memorials, it's part of the job to hear the stories and feel the connection between your client and their pet. But sometimes their story is so tragic that you must sometimes step away and reflect on its meaning. The purpose for such pain. For only when love makes the greatest sacrifice can the pain of loss be felt so profoundly as to resonate to its deepest levels. Levels that require more than just a listening ear, but for someone to retell their story so that hopefully one day their sacrifice will save a life. So it was with Jaspurr. So while I spent many hours working on his memorial, so did I spend hours walking, contemplating what the proper thing to do was. His owner simply wished to retell his story, but Jaspur's story isn't an isolated case. 71% of victims of domestic violence report their abusers also targeting their pets. The statistic grows to 88%, where a family is being supervised for child abuse. Please understand that during the next segment of Jaspur's life, his owner is pregnant, and the father is Jaspur's abuser.
When did you first suspect something was wrong with Jaspurr?
I had gone down, because Jaspurr wasn't the type of cat to not meow. And after we moved in with my mom, me and Corbin and Jaspurr, he had to stay in the basement. I didn't like it, Corbin didn't like it, no one liked it. But it was Mom's rules. Her house, her rules, I had to follow it if I was going to live there.
Yeah. This is when you got up here.
Yeah, when I came back to Sheboygan. And I mean, I noticed that he wasn't meowing. And I went down there one day, my mom and Corbin called me back up. They were like, no, he's fine. Don't worry about him. He's probably just being goofy. He's probably getting used to being down there so often. He's probably just alright. The next day, my brother Dakota was over. And my mom was over, and he still wasn't meowing. And I went down to go check on him. I seen him right by we have the dryer, and right beside the dryer is a little table. And I called for him, and he didn't look at me. And I called for him again, and he didn't look at me. So I went down, and I hunkered down, and I picked him up, and he was covered in dust. I didn't know why he was covered in dust. And I picked him up, I put him on my chest, and he just went, and just flopped. Jaspur's not a floppy cat. He wasn't one, at that point, to be held. And I brought him upstairs, and I'm like, Mom! I started screaming for her and Dakota, and I was like, something's wrong. And they both thought I was crazy. They looked at me, they're like, nothing's wrong with him, Cheyenne. And I'm like, no, you don't know him. There is something wrong with him right now. And Dakota was like, look at him, he's getting up, he's moving around, he's fine. He had gotten up, walked a circle, and flopped back on my lap. That cat was not okay. And I looked at them and I'm like, I'm bringing him up to my room. I don't care what you say. At this point, my cat is sick. There's something wrong with him, and I'm his mom. I know him. I watched him grow up since he was a kitten. I know him. And I'm taking him in my room right now. I called Corbin. He was with his grandma, and they were getting something to eat, and he wouldn't come. And that was my first sign of he did something to him. Because before that, we'd gotten into fights. And he tried to tell me that I had to get rid of my cat. You have to get rid of him. And I told him I'd get rid of you before I'd get rid of my cat. and I got jealous, and when he was jealous, he was angry, and he was going to hurt something. And he told my mom, apparently, that he likes hurting animals. That when he gets mad at people, it's animals he hurts. And I mean, I never caught on to it. I never thought that he was like that with cats. I never thought that he'd be like that with dogs. And I thought that he actually cared about me enough to not hurt my pet that way. Like, I thought he actually cared about Jaspurr. I thought he loved him to some extent. And I guess he told my mom that he was going to poison him. And she never told me about it until after he got sick.
Mm-hmm.
And I took him to the vet. I had tried to go to the Humane Society first, and they were closed. So I called my buddy Chad, and I was like, I need to go now. Something's wrong with him. He needs help now.
Mm-hmm.
And Chad knew him enough, too, to where he's seen him, and he's like, there's something wrong with him. We took him to Sheboygan Animal Hospital, and he was there for about a week, and they didn't do shit. They held him under observation. They wouldn't help him because I didn't have any money. Because I was working a dead-end job at Family Video. And they literally just held him under observation. They didn't help him. They didn't do blood work. They didn't see what was wrong with him. If I would have known, I could have gotten him out sooner. I could have left Corbin. I could have helped him. And I was too late. And then it just got to a certain point where he wasn't eating or drinking anymore. And I bottle fed him. One of my friends gave me a baby bottle, and I bottle fed him every day, and I force fed him every day. And I was keeping him alive, but barely. Like, it was enough to keep him suffering, but not enough to fix him. And my sister was gonna adopt my baby at first. And she told me that she wasn't going to adopt anymore. And that's the day that I had taken Jaspurr into the shelter because I knew that he wasn't getting any better. Like, I had gotten up, and he got up at the same time I did. He was blind. I didn't know he was blind at this time. I'd gotten up. He got up at the same time and started walking towards me, even though he couldn't see me. Like, we had that big of a connection to where he just knew. He knew everything about me. He knew that I needed him. And I felt like he held on to my birthday. I felt like he held on after Corbin left and after all that situation happened. Because I seen Corbin throwing him. That's why I left Corbin. It's because if you're going to abuse my cat in front of me, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I took him to the Humane Society. And they said he was getting better. They said he was eating. And that he was going to be okay, and that they were going to send him home because they knew how much I loved him. And then I just got a call when I was at McDonald's with a friend. He said that he'd taken a turn for the worst, and I needed to come in. And I went in there, and I held him, and he just put his paw on my cheek. He started kneading on my cheek like he was trying to tell me that it was going to be okay. Like, he was still trying to make me feel better, even though he knew he was dying. He knew he wasn't going to get better. He was still on his deathbed trying to make me feel like it was going to be okay. And I couldn't handle it. I put him back, and I went home to my mom, and I told her, like, this isn't working. He's not getting better. Like, an hour later, I got the call, and it was time to put him down. And I went in, and he was unconscious. And he was wrapped up in a blanket. His heart was barely beating. And the nurse had taken the blanket off to move him to where she could put the shot in his leg, and he woke up. And he meowed, and I said his name just once. I was like, Jaspurr, and his eyes just snapped right where I was. And he stared at me. Just stared like he could see me even though he couldn't. And he stared at me until his head hit the table. I was the last thing that he heard. I wish I could say I was the last thing he saw, but I don't know what the last thing he saw was. Because I don't know what he stopped being able to see. He was the best cat. Up until the end, he never got mean. He was getting abused, and And he never got mean. He never hissed. He never clawed. He never bit anyone. He was such a good cat. That never changed. It really did.
So then you got the autopsy results back.
And I was right. They said that the blindness was because of brain trauma, and that's what caused him, like, his brain wouldn't stop bleeding. Like, that's what killed him, is that his brain just wouldn't stop bleeding.
Yeah.
And it just, he couldn't fight it. He tried so hard, and he held on for so long. They said he should have been dead weeks before he died. But he was holding on because he was strong, and he didn't give up until I put him in the Humane Society and I gave him away. I feel like he just didn't want me to see him die. But I wasn't gonna let him die alone.
The most important things are the hardest things to say. They are the things you get ashamed of, because words diminish them. Words shrink the things that seemed limitless when they were in your head, to more than living size when they're brought out. But it's more than that, isn't it? The most important things lie too close to wherever your secret heart is buried, like landmarks to a treasure your enemies would love to steal away. And you may make revelations that cost you dearly, only to have people look at you in a funny way, not understanding what you've said at all or why you thought it was so important that you almost cried while you were saying it. That's the worst, I think. When a secret stays locked within, not for want of a teller, for want of an understanding ear. Stephen King, The Body.